Hello, you're watching news from Kazakhstan. I'm Askar Sharaliyev, and here are the headlines. Military court left unchanged the verdict to Vladislav Chelakh. The appeals board decided that the soldier must stay in jail for life. Pension savings will be stored by the National Bank by midsummer Kazakhstan to create a unified pension savings fund. Almaty veterans celebrated the 70th anniversary of victory in Stalingrad battle. Life in jail for Vladislav Chelakh. Appeals board in Almaty left unchanged the decision of the first instance court. 26 appeals of attorney Sarsenov were not able to influence the verdict. Our crew observed the process in the military court for 2 days in a row.
The verdict of specialized inter-district military court in criminal cases in regard of Vladislav Chelakh to be left unchanged, while the appeals of his attorney Sarsenov unsatisfied. The judge Bakhajan Karamanov upheld the first instance court ruling to pass life sentence on Vladislav Chelakh, charged with the murder of 15 border guards and a huntsman. The defendant's mother commented on the decree on behalf of the defense party, as the lawyer Serik Sarsenov didn't attend the conviction procedure. I expected a different outcome this time, but unfortunately there is nothing we can do about the biased experts and their one-sided examinations. The defendant Vladislav Chelakh refused to attend the appellate trial in person. Instead, he chose to observe the first part of the court session through a video bridge. I'm not going to testify. All I want is watch the trial in real time. The criminal forensic experts from Taldykorgan and Astana also opted for virtual attestation. They were supposed to answer the defense party's questions on dental examination of the victim's remains that might help in DNA profiling. However, it appeared that the dental crowns had not been sent for the expert analysis to either forensic or domestic laboratories. Where are these pieces of evidence now? I'm not sure. They might be in Astana. In addition to that, the Astana criminal law expert Diginbayev admitted making 3 typos in bullet head stamps. While the judge Bakhajan Karamanov chose to neglect the minor infringements, the defendant Chelakh's lawyers and family intend to bring them up in the cassation appeal.
Life after death. The death of Zhenis Tsaganaliyev, one of the bodyguards killed at Arkan-Kirgen massacre, has split his family in 2. Some believe that Chelakh is a killer, others don't. Relatives say that after the funeral, state officials promised to provide them an apartment in Atarau. However, until now, soldier's father lives in a remote village. His son was the only hope and support for him.
This video, along with a few more photographs, is all that's left of Zhenis. The Sundetov's family recalls how the young man joined armed forces upon graduating from the university. He was planning to get married and build a house immediately after the army, yet Arkan-Kirgen tragedy stole all these dreams. In fact, it also changed the relationships in the family, causing a 6-month dispute of whether Chelakh is guilty of Zhenis' death. I'm convinced that Chelakh is guilty because I attended the trial myself. He clearly stated what happened at the border posts, showing how he shot everyone in their sleep. The court ruled a just sentence. How could he possibly kill 15 people alone? Something happened at Arkan-Kirgen, yet most likely it will remain a mystery. Zhenis' only sister Asima is now inclined to address the authorities, seeking help for her father, who lives in the wilderness all alone. Following the tragedy of Arkan-Kirgen, I immediately applied for housing because I'm renting myself. My father basically lost the provider with Zhenis' death. The local administration officer claimed that in order for Daulet Sundetov to receive a free housing, he should submit certain documents and be a resident of the city. He still hasn't submitted the documents. Only then Daulet Sundetov will be registered and considered for free housing according to the law. It is not likely for Zhenis Tsaganaliyev's father to receive an apartment in the city in the nearest future, although the old man doesn't pursue the idea of receiving a free housing from the government. He only wishes his son was alive. He will never accept the fact that Vladislav Chelakh, charged with murder of Zhenis, may be suddenly released.
The Ministry of Internal Affairs claims there is no link between 2 suicides in the Border Patrol Agency of the NSC, which occurred almost one after another. The arguments of the investigators were voiced on Wednesday in Astana by the official representative of MIA, Nurdilda Aras.
A number of forensic examinations will be conducted, and based on them a procedural decision will be taken. Ministry of Internal Affairs doesn't link the suicide with other events. Those are separate facts, and therefore each of the cases will be investigated separately. On January 31st, head of Border Service Academy Talgat Isetov was found dead in his office. He died due to a gunshot wound. Supposedly it was a suicide, although relatives and internet users doubt that. 5 days later, Murat Kadralinov, deputy head of Chundin border detachments, committed suicide on the alleged grounds of a family dispute. Kazakhstan residents who believe in mystic powers have already linked a number of tragedies in the border service with the curse of Vladislav Chelakh's mother. After the verdict has been pronounced, Svetlana Vashenko threw a handful of hoodoo poppy seed at the state prosecutors. Be it as it may, all those suicides negatively affect the image of Kazakhstan, experts believe. Neighbors are getting a negative idea of Kazakhstan. What do Russians know about Kazakhstan? Religious extremism, corruption, plane crash, suicide of a general, and that's it. All those negative events come to mind when people think of Kazakhstan.
The flight recorders of the crashed CRJ-200 near Almaty were able to record all the information. As International Aviation Committee informs, the works on restoring and decoding of information from the flight recorders is already complete.
Aviation Committee copied all data and transferred it to the Investigation Committee for further processing and analysis. It hasn't been announced how long would it take to decrypt and identify the causes of the crash. To recall, CRJ-200 aircraft, which belongs to Scott Air, crashed not far from Almaty Airport on January 29th. The plane was flying from Kokshetau and landing in heavy fog. All 21 passengers, including crew members, were reported dead. The investigation considers several versions of what happened. First is weather conditions, second, technical failure of the airline, and human error.
Does Almaty need a second airport? After the tragedy on January 29th, public is raising the old project of constructing an airport in Kapchagay. For 10 years, the project was frozen. Since then, the issue was raised at least 4 times. More details in the next report.
The idea of transferring the Almaty airport outside city was first proposed by the authorities of the Kazakh Soviet Socialistic Republic more than 20 years ago. In the 90s, officials even chose the location of a new airport in 110 kilometers from Almaty. When all necessary projects had been developed, the construction of the runway started in 1993. Unfortunately, everything was frozen once the customers faced financial disability. Experienced pilot Nail Seyfulin recalls that in the early 90s, he and Vladimir Kuropatinka, at the time the head of the airline Sayakhat Aero, proposed to transfer the airport to Kapchagay city, a perfect place with no fog and 350 days of sunshine a year. The airport was supposed to serve for commercial, local and transit routes, as well as an alternative aerodrome for Almaty. At that time, the project was approved by the government. The government of the Republic of Kazakhstan believes that the construction of Sayakhat Airport at the selected location is reasonable, promising and indispensable. The new airport is not regarded as a competitor to the existing one and has no such intention whatsoever. The project of the airport, for the first time in the country, focuses on the cargo transportation, the flow of which is increasing steadily. Sayakhat Aero didn't have investors, including Mostastroy, to engage in the new airport construction, who allegedly declared themselves bankrupt when the Soviet Union's collapse caused the political unrest and vague changes. A tragic air crash on January 29, 2012 made officials recall the idea of airport transfer. Thus, Senate deputies started talking about tougher laws for air carriers, and mass media published some articles on the need to build a new airport. However, air carriers are reluctant to raise this issue, although the head of Air Astana spoke in favor of Kapchagay project a few years ago. We do know that Almaty Airport is located in the area of frequent fog. Unfortunately, this huge problem cannot be tackled, and so far the only solution is the construction of an alternative airport. It remains unknown whether the government will revive the project on the new airport construction. Zamanbek Nurkadilov, once the head of the Almaty region, tried to resume its construction in 2000. A symbolic stone was even laid at the future site of the airport, which unfortunately was later stolen.
I came, I saw, I warned. The team of Republic newspaper met prosecutors on Wednesday who came to warn them of inadmissibility violating the law. They clarified that the new edition is graphically similar to the banned weekly Golos Respubliki, while the editorial staff is the same. If on Tuesday only Tatiana Trubacheva was forbidden to read the Republic, On Wednesday, explanatory conversations were held with everyone present.
The prosecutor's visit to the editorial office of the judicially closed newspaper Голос Республики was long expected. The chief editorial staff of the single mass media entity Respublika infringes the ruling of Medeo Regional Court by continuing distribution of media publications through a range of newspapers and internet resources with a single editorial office and policy and resemblant design. The names of the forbidden mass media journalists found on the imprint of the New Republic publication were interpreted by the public prosecutor as the court decree violation. Although the judicial ruling didn't impose the employment ban on dissenting reporters, the prosecution officials still served a legal notice to the mass media employees. In turn, the editorial staff demanded revealing a formal reason behind the legal proceedings. Will the authorities be just as concerned if we start publishing a pro-presidential newspaper? And will the prosecution continue if we alter the publication's design? Also, what exactly does the term single editorial staff mean? The prosecutors chose to ignore the fact that the court decree in termination of 40 mass media entities, including the Голос Республики, issued on November 12, 2012, doesn't legally apply to the newspaper Republic or mention the names of the journalists involved. The court ruling doesn't restrain my right or the right of my colleagues to work with the publishers of our choice. It was only intended to take down certain mass media resources. After spending an hour to find civilian witnesses, the prosecutors were still unable to complete the procedure as the publisher staff refused to sign the legal notice. The prosecutors themselves seem unable to tell wrongful actions from legal proceedings. That's why I advised the editorial staff to refrain from signing the notice and acknowledging violation. On Wednesday, the court officer served summons on Tatiana Trubacheva, who will have to stand trial on Thursday on suspicion of performing the chief editor duties for the Republic newspaper.
New rules of the game at the pension market. Until July 1st, all the assets saved up by the citizens, which is approximately $21 billion, will be consolidated in the Unified Pension Savings Fund and will be managed by the National Bank. And even though Vice Prime Minister Kairat Kelimbetov has tried to calm people down by saying that nothing will happen to the money, the Association of Pension Funds is already raising the issue of substantial risks and not just economical ones. Will Kazakh residents be able to receive their pension payments? Find out from the next report.
$21 billion accumulated by the citizens of Kazakhstan for retirement are to be transferred to the Unified Pension Savings Fund. On Wednesday, the Deputy Prime Minister Kairat Kelimbetov announced the new money box, which will be established in the country since July 1st, 2013. The transfer of pension savings of citizens will be realized in full scale. The creation of the Unified Pension Savings Fund is not a nationalization of pension savings. They will remain as the property of the citizens and will be stored in the National Bank. The Kazakhstan Stock Exchange seems to be puzzled by this news. It is yet to be determined how termination of 11 pension funds would affect the stock market and how this innovation will be spelled out in the legislation. The stockbrokers wonder if pension funds would be able to manage at least part of savings, or is it all going to be monopolized by the Unified Fund? On one hand, it will reduce the number of stock exchange participants. On the other, it centralizes the flows of one powerful investor. The head of the Pension Funds Association, Aydar Alibayev, also has a question to Deputy Prime Minister. He is concerned not only about financial but also social risks. This is not a laughing matter. The public administration expenses reach $21 billion. In this regard, what does the future hold for the employees of 11 funds that have recently been part of the advertised state pension system? We're talking about lots of money, which of course attracts many people. In fact, now it can be presented as an improvement of the pension system. However, in my opinion, there's no improvement. Alibayev believes that the reform may affect the investment climate. His perspective on the innovation so far is simply an intervention of the state into the market sector.
ArcelorMittal Temirtau company confirmed its intention to sack several thousand workers. However, it will be called optimization, outsourcing and voluntary leave.
It is hard for people to understand that out of 30,000 workers at the factory, only 3,000 will keep their jobs. But we're in a progress of transformation and changing the organization structure in order to optimize the workforce. According to company representatives, other steel plants have much less personnel than Karmete. The company no longer needs the entire staff as it is going through modernization. According to company's estimates, around 1,200 people will resign voluntarily. They will mainly be workers of the retired age, cleaners and other workers. The company promises them a compensation of several $1,000s depending on qualification and employment period. Last year, around 1,500 workers left the jobs according to the scheme. Other divisions will be outsourced by subsidiary enterprises. The management at the factory explained that those measures are required to decrease the cost of steel products. However, those plans are not looking good for metal workers' labor union. Workplaces are being freed now and no new workers are filling them. Those who stayed have to work more and face higher emotional pressure.
Mass evictions of interest holders in Astana were stopped due to intervention of MPs. This was revealed on Wednesday during a roundtable on Kazakhstan's implementation of UN human rights recommendations. However, no one knows for how long the MPs would be able to hold out the evictions.
Attendance at the meeting organized by the Parliamentary Development Fund included all 36 of the evicted families, parliament, human rights activists and UN representatives. Participants were trying to determine whether the eviction of shareholders who already own 2 or more apartments is legal. In fact, none of the court-martials or local administration officials who executed the government decrees of 1 apartment per family showed up for negotiations. Human rights advisor to UN Regional Office Dip Magar refrained from comments. Meanwhile, the people's representatives had much to tell to the representatives of local authorities. What are the results of this project? Where did this money go? How much was spent on each individual residential complex? The problem will remain unless we achieve transparency.
Asyljan Mamutbekov was asked to resign yet again. Minister of Agriculture was criticized by Communist Vladislav Kazaryov, who complained that Agriculture Ministry openly ignored the problems of livestock farmers, and the cabinet must urgently jump on the issue.
According to Kazaryov, farms are now in a complex situation. The forage fodder is expensive and grain companies absolved all responsibility of providing hay and fodder. Weather conditions are also causing a decrease in livestock number. Cattle losses are still going and the Pavlodar region horses are dying in large numbers. The deputy has addressed most of the complaints to the department in charge. Mamutbekov cannot be the head of the Ministry of Agriculture that is primarily in charge of cattle breeding, said Kazaryov. It is not the first complaint on the minister. Other parliament deputies, farmers union and the audit committee also had to bone to pick up with him. However, the minister replied that it is next to impossible to please everyone. I'm surprised that Minister of Agriculture wants to keep away and says that the government doesn't involve in the private sector issues. Isn't it providing meat and milk for people a government issue? We can give you 2 more minutes in accordance with section 2.9. The speaker may be given 2 additional minutes. The issue is rather urgent. Do you need more time? I could speak more, but I think I'm done here.
State officials who stole money aimed at fighting floods were detained in South Kazakhstan region. The prosecution office of Saragash district instigated several criminal cases against the director of the construction company, technical control representative and the head of the public utilities of the district. They now face up to 12 years in jail for embezzling entrusted property.
To recap, thaw and abundant rainfall caused floods in South Kazakhstan in January this year. The dam that ensured safety for several villages started to get damaged. A reinforced concrete structure was virtually melting with the snow. Construction faults of the dam came to surface during the rainfalls. The structure could not hold a heavy flow and the water flooded over 100 of houses. The losses were estimated at over $1,328,000. Last year, $332,000 were allocated for the construction of the dam. Investigators found out later that 1/3 of the money was not used for construction purposes. Based on investigation results, a criminal case has been initiated under the Article 176 of the Criminal Code of Kazakhstan. Currently, the criminal case is being examined in the Regional Prosecutor's Office. The investigation is underway. According to the expert review, construction works in the amount of $87,000 were never carried out.
Syria expressed its wish to join the customs union of Kazakhstan, Russia and Belarus. On Tuesday in Damascus, Syrian Minister of Economy met with Belarus ambassador, where he voiced his country's wish for integration. The response is yet to be made. Experts are concerned that there is no solid political ground for the integration of already existing 3 member states. The issue was discussed in Astana on Wednesday.
During the video conference, Moscow political and economic experts concluded that future Eurasian integration requires serious dynamics. While the agreement between country leadership is already in place, the support in the media and interest of public organizations is yet to come. Proposed solutions included involving the businessmen into discussions as an interested party to encouraging party activists to establish interstate relations. The political and economic experts supported the idea on continuing their discussions in the open air and establishing a discussion platform in Borovое resort, for instance. Should we be waiting for the authorities to make a decision, we may simply run out of time and fail to make one after all.
The anniversary of Stalingrad battle was marked in Almaty on Wednesday. Our reporter met with those who defended the hero city and those who observed the order of Comrade Stalin, not a single step back.
The 70th anniversary of the Battle of Stalingrad was celebrated with the music from the 40s in an Almaty restaurant on Wednesday. Alas, without war veterans themselves, since most of them are too old for charity dinners. Those in attendance were treated by pilau and traditional drinks. Kazakhstan's veterans heard about the news that the Russian city of Volgograd will be called Stalingrad during annual war-related holidays, the total of 6 days every year. They believe that, from historical perspective, the city deserves it. Many war and home front veterans insist on keeping the name of the city as a historical reminder. This was the toughest war, and that's real history. Dmitry Alaturtsev was invited to the Wednesday event but couldn't make it due to a busy schedule. The Battle of Stalingrad is very important for the 89-year-old veteran. At that time he was 18 years old and the dugout near the besieged city housing his brigade of 12 men came under a heavy bombardment. Dmitry was the sole survivor, but the command mistakenly sent his family a death notice. It could be done only to commemorate the victory, but the later exposure of Stalin's doings should be also taken into consideration. His close circle eliminated the entire cultural elite of Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Russia and all the Baltic states. They were literally slaughtered and eradicated. Since 1589, this Russian city was known as Tsaritsyn. 336 years later, it was renamed after the Soviet leader Joseph Stalin. Following the exposure of his personality cult, Stalingrad became Volgograd in 1961. Starting this year, the city of seemingly democratic Russia will revert back to association with Stalin, even if it's just for 6 days a year.
Well-known opera singer Dmitry Khvorostovsky and musicians of the popular British band Touch and Go will take part in the charity event in Almaty. The fundraised money will be used to create an online support center for teenagers. Details next.
Since his childhood, Danyar dreamed of becoming a pilot and used to say that he would fly above the clouds. I didn't notice when he became reserved and didn't pay attention to it. If I only asked him about his life back then. But I was caught up at work and now it is too late. On December 2nd, Danyar committed suicide. He was only 14. 14-year-old Danyar is one of 257 teenagers who committed suicide. According to the latest data, Kazakhstan is now ranked 3rd in the world for the number of child suicides. Loneliness and the lack of attention are the key reasons. Psychologist Anna Mirgenova advises parents to avoid losing emotional bond with their children and be open to discuss any issues. After the collapse of the Soviet Union and in the last 20 years we've been living in continuous crisis with parents burdened by all this trauma. It is then passed from one generation to another, so the situation is quite difficult. The main reason why people commit suicide regardless of their age is the lack of understanding and love from at least one person in the world. Experts propose to reform the system of psychological help and plan to launch an online support center in Almaty in the nearest future. The organizers of the annual charity ball will also raise money for this project, which will employ 12 psychologists specializing in teenage suicides. Counseling will be provided via free hotline and Skype. Is 257 children a small or big number for a state with a population of 16 million people? What about the loss of these families, their kids, nephews and grandchildren? The 5th charity ball will be held in Almaty on May 4th, featuring international opera sensation Dmitry Khvorostovsky and jazz band Touch and Go. Psychologist Anna Mergenova, however, is skeptical about the idea of addressing such a serious issue through a luxurious party. She says that kids are not affected as much by the suicide reports involving their peers as they are by the overall interest in the topic due to the involvement of celebrities in the various awareness campaigns. The expert called the upcoming event as fiddling while the Rome burns. I believe the issue with child suicide doesn't really go well with drinks and dances, since there is nothing to celebrate about this tragedy. The charity event in question takes cue from the famous Venice Ball. It is becoming an increasingly luxurious event with each year and is hosted by the most expensive hotel in Almaty. If the required amount of money will be raised at the ball this spring, the proposed counseling center will be established by September, say the activists.
This is all we have time for now. Thank you for watching. Stay well.